U.S. President Joe Biden is offering a new warning to Israel about world opinion and its war with Hamas. He is again urging caution to protect Palestinian civilians, doing that just hours before United Nations members, including Canada, are set to vote on a call for an immediate ceasefire.
Tough spot. We continue to provide military assistance to Israel until they get rid of Hamas. But we have to be careful. They have to be careful. The whole world's public opinion can shift overnight. We can't let that happen.
In his remarks at a White House Hanukkah celebration last evening, Biden also made it clear he has policy differences with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But his administration's steadfast support for Israel continues to spark protests, including one yesterday outside the White House. The U.S. is already on record at the UN as opposing a ceasefire, using its veto to block a resolution in front of the Security Council. Now that ceasefire call is going to the full General Assembly. So far, Canada isn't joining calls for a ceasefire. Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly is holding off on saying how Canada will vote on today's non-binding UN resolution. Here she is speaking with David Cochrane on Power and Politics yesterday here on CBC News Network.
How will Canada vote on that, and how do you get to the end of violence if people don't call for a ceasefire?
Well, indeed, we need to make sure that there is the violence must stop. Indeed, again, the cycle of violence is not helping Israel's long-term security, and we need to make sure that the way that Israel is conducting itself is in line with international humanitarian law. So on the question of the resolution, David, that you asked me, we are still looking at the different versions of the resolution. We're negotiating.
Joly is re-emphasizing Canada's position that Palestinian civilians must be protected, and she adds Canada would support what she calls accountability systems at the international level to look at the Israeli military's conduct in the war. Officials in Gaza are reporting dozens of deaths overnight as Israel intensifies airstrikes into Gaza and ground forces push further into the south. We have Sarah Coates again in Tel Aviv to begin our live coverage this morning. Sarah, ahead of that vote at the UN General Assembly this afternoon, there is an attempt to allow more aid into Gaza and increasingly louder calls that what is being done is not enough. So let's begin this morning with what Israel is doing with that second border crossing. What's happening?
Hello there, Heather. Well, look, last night the IDF did announce that this Kerem Shalom crossing, it's a tri-border crossing between Egypt, Israel and the Gaza Strip, would be open. But look, it is yet to be seen if the opening of this crossing will have any impact on getting this aid to the people inside Gaza who so desperately need it. Now, it is important to mention that these trucks will just be inspected at this crossing. They won't actually be moving through the Kerem Shalom crossing into the Gaza Strip. They will be sent back to that Rafah border crossing, which has really been seen as a bottleneck for these past few weeks. And look, it is important to mention that this crossing, the Rafah border crossing, was originally designed as a foot crossing, not a crossing to allow high numbers of trucks coming through it, like we've been seeing since this blockade was put on the Strip. Now, we are hearing in Hebrew media here in Israel at the moment that Israeli officials are actually speaking right now to discuss the possibility of potentially opening this Kerem Shalom crossing to allow trucks in through that way. But look, up until now, Heather, this is what we've been hearing from the Israeli government, that no trucks will go through into the Gaza Strip from Israel.
Sarah, the Israeli government is providing more information on what it sees ahead for the fight against Hamas and how long this war may continue. What is the latest we're hearing from cabinet officials from the government?
Well, look, I'll just bring you a breaking line, Heather, firstly, before we get into that. After days of shelling, the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry is reporting that Israeli forces are now raiding the Kamal Adwan hospital. That is a large hospital in the northern part of the Strip, right next to Jabalia refugee camp, which, as we know, has been a hub of Israeli activity over these past few weeks. Now, to get back to your question, we did hear from the Defence Minister, Yoav Gallant, last night. He said that his forces are taking control of these key Hamas strongholds, one of them being Jabalia refugee camp, the other one Shijaya refugee camp. And look, he did come out to say that some of these Hamas battalions that were once considered invincible are now being, on the verge of collapse. Now, this comes, Heather, as Israeli forces are continuing to push further south. We're talking down into places like Khan Yunis here, with residents there ordered to evacuate once more. We're also hearing reports, this has been unconfirmed by the IDF, of airstrikes also on Rafah, that is down in the south, where these people are being told to evacuate. So certainly very, very concerning, given that Palestinian sources on the ground say a number of people have been killed. But also, it is important to mention that 67 days into this war, Heather, and rockets continue to be fired from the Gaza Strip into Israeli territory. The latest hitting a neighbourhood in Ashkelon. Still no reports of injury or damage, but it just goes to show that after 67 days of war, Hamas still has rockets in the Strip.
Sarah, thank you very much. Sarah Coates, live from Tel Aviv, as we begin our coverage of the war between Israel and Hamas.